Thank you. So hospitality is at a crossroads, right? Do you differentiate or do you emulate rentals? And that's one of the topics we're going to be talking about with our industry luminaries here. And of course, Marriott Choice, and of course we all know Dorothy, 18 years at Best Western, including a CMO. So welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. So recently, Phocuswright research found that more than 6 in 10 travelers who booked a short-term rental considered a hotel. So we like to think that some of that, that's kind of a lost opportunity. So the question is, are hotels doing enough to kind of differentiate themselves from rentals, or there's some aspect to rentals that should be emulated? So that's the question. I guess we'll start with you, Drew.
Sure, great. First of all, good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for having me here. Secondly, I can't miss the opportunity to thank you all, and especially for you at Phocuswright, to have this conference at our hotel. So thank you very much, and I hope they're treating you well. Paige, the GM here, is the best in class, and her team is very excited to have you all here, so I hope everything's going well. But again, a big thank you for your partnership. So I have a bit of an interesting point of view on this one because I work for a company where we're in both businesses. So obviously the majority of our business comes from the traditional hotel lodging product, but we did enter into home rentals back right before the pandemic, and we really saw actually the behavior you just said. So our Bonvoy members were coming to us and they're saying, look, I'm loyal to you, I stay most of the time in your hotels, but there's these like 2 or 3 stays every year that I can't stay with you. You don't have the product I need, you don't have the experience I'm looking for. It could be the capacity of the room, it could be you're staying with family, location, all the things that you know about home rentals. So we decided to get in the business, and it's really because of that. It's because we want to be able to meet the customer's needs with the specific purchase occasion that they have and the requirements that they're looking for. And so it's been a big success because we've been able to do that, kind of keep them in the Bonvoy program and have them find what they need. So kind of directly to answer your question, I think we need to do a better job of understanding what that trip occasion is and what the requirements of the customer are for that stay, and then meet those needs. And it all comes down to asking questions and then being very clear about the product that you offer.
And also, what about kind of merging? Because if I'm a guest, I may not specifically say, oh, I want a home and villa, or I want an apartment, or I want a hotel room. I just have certain needs. Yeah. So, how do you kind of present all that in the display?
Yeah, it's one of the things we're working on. I mean, one of the both benefits and drawbacks of having lots of product is trying to figure out and rationalize and present exactly what the customer is looking for. So some of it's about signals and insight, but it's also just making customers aware. We actually see when we spend on search for our homes and villas product, it actually benefits hotels more. So the customers do cross over, but it all depends on what they're looking for. That's what drives conversion.
Robert, should hotels do more to play up the attributes that are similar to rentals?
Drew hit on it. It's trip occasion, right? It really is driven by what the trip occasion is. We look at sort of the family of brands we have now, obviously with the Radisson acquisition, and we think we're meeting different trip occasions, different segments really well. If you think about extended stay during the pandemic, really took off and really grew as a segment for us and the rest of the industry.
You guys did really well during the pandemic.
You're doing really well.
People were driving and...
Exactly, and I think it's more about what can you lean into and do better as a hotelier, and then see what the trip occasions of these rentals are and how do you emulate that and get better.
So what would some of the attributes be that you would say, we have this versus... And could we bring up that ad? I know that we have the Hilton ad for the stay that I don't know if many of you saw it, but, they kind of go into the spooky house and they're getting this, like, haunted experience from their rental, which looks like a direct attack at Airbnb, perhaps. But, so just...
Yeah, I think you hear a lot in the news today about people getting frustrated with what's going on in the rental business in terms of, the fees they're getting charged on cleaning. Sometimes when they get to the rental, it's not exactly up to expectations. So I think they're going through a growing period, just like the hospitality is trying to grow as well and understand the changing dynamics of what the consumer is looking for in a hotel stay or a short-term rental.
Dorothy, your take.
Well, there's a couple things I would say. First of all, Hilton to me has always had best-in-class creative, and that was really repositioning the stay experience. There was a campaign, obviously. Paris Hilton was in their first version of that. So they've always been the pace setters in the advertising space, which I think we all benefit from in the hotel category. But I very much agree with what both Drew and Robert have said. It's travel party size, length of stay, purpose of trip. All of those original differentiators are the signals that really determine the type of product that people have. And Robert's absolutely right. I mean, if you look at the darlings coming out of COVID, it's extended stay and collection brands that are where all hotel developers are really focused on in terms of growth trajectory and NOI. So that really speaks to the consumer lens and what they are demonstrating on what they want.
But is there a missed opportunity for hotels that they're still not doing enough in terms of offering, say, a situation for groups, offering laundry, offering different services that people might want that is something that they would get from a rental, that kind of more, that isolated experience. So even though I'm at a hotel, I still feel like I'm more in charge as the guest of my experience.
Well, I think you bring up a really good point, Lorraine, in terms of how we can do a better job at communicating all the amenities at hotels. But I would tell you, as someone who has worked in select service for a very long time, they have laundry, they have free breakfast, they have a lot of amenities at the product, as well as very good guest satisfaction that gives customers confidence in terms of their decision. So I don't know that we tell that story as well, but again, I look at leisure travelers 2 times a year that they stay in a hotel or some kind of extended stay type product. So it's very hard to reach and communicate all of that information. The business traveler, because there's frequency, you can tell your story more effectively and they understand us better.
We've sorry, Lorraine, but we've actually noticed the same, what Dorothy just said. First step is we have an awareness problem. We went back and looked at our portfolio. We have close to 300,000 rooms that fit the description that Dorothy just said of laundry, of things like laundry facilities and larger rooms and things like that, extended stay. And people don't really think about that. It has become in the industry a bit of you're either a hotel or you're a home rental, and there's actually inventory in between.
But that was kind of my question to you
Yeah.
earlier about kind of combining it. So I'm just looking for an experience. Like it doesn't really matter what it is, and then you kind of providing that offer.
Exactly.
I think what I would add is they're able to coexist. I mean, if you look at sort of coming out of the pandemic, the hospitality industry has really rebounded quite
Yes,
well.
it has.
So there's clearly a need for both, right, in this marketplace because the consumer is deciding with their wallet, right? And we've seen record occupancy and ADRs coming out of the pandemic like the rest of the industry. So I think the consumer is voting for both.
And I do want to be a little contrarian, Lorraine, because I try to be very honest about the stay experience. It's part of the entire experience, so I don't think we can over-index on the importance of it. It's got to be the entire package that presents. So there's all kinds of factors that consumer is making decisions around, but travel party size, length of stay, and price and location are still the top drivers for a lot of the decision making. So we just need to take those signals and then serve back the right content to them.
Do you think hotels are doing a good enough job reaching Gen Z and millennials, aren't necessarily going to go on Google, but, use TikTok instead?
So I have a contrarian point of view on that too, because I do think that Gen Zs and millennials are more like other demos than what we sometimes consider. And if you look at YouTube, of course, it indexes the highest. It's 80% with Gen Z. I think it's almost 80% with millennials. So YouTube is still the #1 driver. TikTok is growing at a much faster clip for sure. But the reality is for us is that we've got to understand closed user groups and what they're really looking for and serve back the right offer to them.
Hotels doing a good enough job doing that?
I think there's a way to go in terms of our data mining capabilities and our ability to do closed user marketing, but I think we're a lot better than we were.
Okay.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's a growing marketplace advertising space that the hospitality industry has to learn how
What do you need to do, like specifically?
That's the question is what are they looking for, right? How do you meet when someone's on TikTok or Instagram, what are the characteristics that you can put in front of them that's going to get them interested in your brands?
Right. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like this is another one of those where the things we're working on, the kind of companies that we have, actually will fit really well with this generation. We just have to do a better job of explaining it. I saw a stat just last week. I think it was about 80% of this generation says they won't do business with a company if that company doesn't treat their employees well. So it's all about the respect of the company. Marriott's kind of born on that. We all have, very high engagement scores with our associates. So it's just a question of making sure they understand what we stand for and that it's the type of company that they want to have an affiliation with.
And if I could just add a little more to what Drew is saying, that's where I think what has been presented at this conference so far, Lorraine, because this ESG story, which to me is more around the climate piece and the diversity and inclusion story, is where the Gen Z and millennials are going to hold us accountable with the announcements that came through from Biden yesterday in terms of government contracting and really reinforcing a lot of those standards into how the RFPs are going to be solicited. We just have to, I think all the brands are doing a pretty good job on their annual ESG reporting, but they're not carrying that further. They're not helping their teammates at their organizations to really tell that story more effectively.
Do you think you could really move the needle by being a lot more outspoken about your sustainability initiatives? I mean, could that really move the needle?
For the right
I think we're
demographics.
Be forced to.
Yeah. I think it's an expectation of these Gen Z or millennials is that's what they expect. Right, so we're going to have to get there.
So you got to do. So I'm going to bring this back because it's interesting. You mentioned sustainability, and we're talking about it from the guest point of view, but let's talk about it from the talent point of view, right? So we have this perfect storm in hospitality. It's this unbelievable year in terms of demand. From what I understand, we're going to see a revenue surpassing 2019 by 2022. Yet we also have issues with, we don't have enough, we have a labor shortage, we don't have enough young people interested in even entering university programs. And that brings us to a service issue in some instances, not here of course, but, and so you have rising prices and then you have a service issue kind of clashing. Okay, so we talked about, a little bit, we had a group yesterday, and we talked about how sustainability is one of the ways to attract talent. And I want to talk a little bit about what do you need to do to get more people interested in hospitality and working in the field so that we can solve these problems?
Well, I think that's a question of the day, Lorraine, that we're all trying to figure out together, because I don't think the answers are easy or we would have figured it out. But I do think that we created major trust issues with our employees through COVID by the dramatic layoffs that we engaged with, and I don't think we can underestimate that. I also think that we've got to really think about compensation and how we're going to close the gap and really demonstrate that hospitality has some real career growth opportunities. And when I think about myself and when I think about select service, you're handed the key of a $20 million box. Often you're given a lot of autonomy to run that business. There's a tremendous amount of learning that goes into that opportunity. But I think we've got to merchandise what value creation about being a business leader on property does and how that may fuel their growth trajectory in hospitality or other industries. It really is a phenomenal business opportunity.
Yeah. Okay. So, I guess number one is, the talent thing, but number two is what is there an opportunity at this point, because there still is a labor shortage, to charge for housekeeping, for example? I mean, is there a revenue opportunity there?
So you're looking at the airline model, which I think the hospitality industry.
Well, I mean, why not? They're making a lot of money doing that.
They have. Look, I think what Choice has done is we've worked really closely with our franchisees to really create what they say housekeeping on demand, really working with the franchisees whenever they have the labor to understand what they want to offer to the guest. And really for us, it's the key to communicate it to the guest. So you set expectations when they're checking in. Are you going to get housekeeping every day? Is it every 2 days or 3 days? We do a lot, especially in our upper upscale brands like Cambria and above, text messaging to guests. Hey, we're going to do housekeeping every 3 days, but if you need something, please text us and we'll bring it. Right? It's really resetting the expectations of the guests when they're in the property.
Yeah.
So a few things on this. So first of all, we're not charging for housekeeping. So, and despite many requests, we are not. We have reinstated our housekeeping standards by our different brand tiers. But I would say overall, to your question about attracting people and where we are as an industry with service, I would have answered this question very differently about 7-8 months ago, where obviously demand had surged back, inflation had surged, and you had this big mismatch between the price you're paying as a customer and then the service level you're getting. But since then, with both staffing up, we've reinstated all our F&B requirements. I mentioned housekeeping. We've put our brand standard audits back in, so we are now holding hotels accountable for their service level performance. So we're kind of back to where we were, but it doesn't look exactly the same, right? The housekeeping looks a bit different, but it's now more consistent, and we've kind of reinstated the expectations of service that we didn't have, back, I would say, in the spring. And a lot of that has to do is because we have been able to attract labor. It's been a slog. I mean, we've had to hire like 5,000 people in the customer engagement centers
It's still a million
that I
people
run.
off,
Yeah,
right? Like,
yeah. It's been very hard. But you have to get creative. You have to do more flexible. Even on property, we're starting to do shared shifts, right? More flexible work hours.
Contractors?
Yeah, we have to do. You have to find all different options to find the labor because the world has changed a little bit. But the service level expectations should not change for our customers.
I want to go back to the lost opportunity question, because I think about food, and I think about, if you're in your Uber, and I'm heading to the Marriott, and now Uber's like you're hungry, so you want to order food. And in many cases, again, not at this property, but in many cases, properties had to close their restaurants, and they don't even have F&B. So now I'm ordering food from a third party. They're delivering it to my room. The hotel gets a what percentage from that sale? Is that a lost opportunity? Why don't you get more involved with, food delivery?
I think hoteliers would love to figure out how to add value and opportunities for revenue. But the reality is that the money is in the room, and they're highly focused in terms of driving their NOIs. So everybody's being very purposeful and intentional about how they approach their business growth in terms of what is going to drive the right business outcome. So I would offer to you some of those things are best left to others, and it's a partnership opportunity to ensure you meet the guest needs, but it's not going to be a big differentiator to the bottom line for the hotel.
Okay. You agree?
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, we're actually working on this a bit even before the pandemic started, and I think it's just kind of exacerbated it a bit. So we're expanding mobile dining through our app, so we are trying to capture some of that and also help our restaurants and our F&B in the hotels. For our premium brands, we switched to a different type of room service where it's kind of grab and go. Some of that was due to the wonderful struggle to try to make room service profitable, but also the customers telling us they really don't want someone in their room with setting up the table and all that. We still do that in our luxury brands. So we actually started piloting that kind of before the pandemic. And then in the spirit of covering our bases, we did a partnership with Uber, which includes Uber Eats. So if you're in the Bonvoy program, you can get points, by using Uber Eats, just to try to capture some of the customer behavior there and some of the affiliation. But to your point, a DoorDash delivery to our hotel, there's not much commercial opportunity for us there. I'll only say that my 19-year-old son, I think, is single-handedly keeping DoorDash in business. And I have to cut his account off one of these days.
Okay. So you mentioned the app. So, and Marriott really was one of the first to come out with creating an ecosystem, right? And obviously, for any kind of travel supplier, anyone in travel, trying to get that engagement with the app because you're traveling 2 to 3 times a year, how do I get people in between those trips to engage with me? Is a struggle.
Yep.
And I know this is a question I'm going to ask later for our pundits. But I'd like to know a little bit. How are you developing an ecosystem? Should you be developing one? Should hospitality companies even attempt it with their apps, or just say, yeah, my app is going to be a tool for booking and a tool for on property, and then you may not use it for another 6 months.
You want me to go first?
Yeah, but might as well.
So first of all, I hope the pundits don't say, I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. So we'll see. Just forget what I said if it was wrong. Well, first of all, our app our digital channel is our fastest growing channel, and it's all driven by the app. So in terms of app adoption, we couldn't be more pleased. We still think there's room to grow, but we couldn't be more pleased. But we view the app as an engagement mechanism. Bookings, of course, right? There's also special offers, things like that. But then a lot of it is about service too. So being able to interact with a hotel like this, having the mobile key, mobile check-in, all those things have become quite sticky, and customers have come to expect it. It's still a lot of work if you're a non-member to get you into our loyalty program and then download the app and then use it. You all struggle with this too, I'm sure, in your businesses. It's a multi-step process and engagement process, but it's working really well. And we're trying to put features in there, obviously, that the customer wants, but also to recognize that for the average customer, right, our product is a pretty low purchase frequency kind of business. I mean, maybe 2-3 stays a year. Obviously not our big loyal members. So we're just trying to find other things like Uber partnerships that help keep our engagement and keep our brands top of mind with the customers.
Yeah, I think for choice, our mobile app is critical. Is it going to be a daily activity for our members? Likely not. But there's obviously, you want to make sure they're engaged in making direct bookings on the app. You want to make sure if they're in the loyalty program, they're looking at how far they are to get the next reward. We're doing things like your extras, where if you check in, you get a free Starbucks gift card or Uber, right? So you can do things that are generating engagement. And that ultimately is, how do you start to expand it so the app is the first travel app they go to, the credit card that's associated with the loyalty programs, top of wallet, right? So there is an ecosystem for our set of customers that really look to us as their travel provider, that we continue want to lean in and really engage with them.
What do you think, Dorothy? You think, what can they do more, hotels, to get more engagement?
Well, I think the app and the loyalty program are completely interdependent, and to me it comes down to, we're all trying to drive down cost of customer acquisition. So it's trying to keep that customer in our ecosystem so that we don't necessarily have to pay to bring them in. So they definitely have a place. It is, all the things that both Robert and Drew said are absolutely true, but I do think it's a focal point. I think the issue for us is really understanding the different customers, and some of them are not going to adopt some of those pieces of the puzzle because they just aren't going to invest the time and energy. So we have to be responsive to the different type of customers that use our hotels.
Loyalty. So, and that which all ties in, right? All ties into the app. And of course, your most loyal customers have the app, use the app. But now we have it, Expedia has a loyalty program, right? And now it's, for every brand, Expedia brand, there's one loyalty program. How does the guest differentiate? Because that was a true differentiator, right? I was getting my points, and I was able, and that was something that tied me to a certain brand, whether it be, Choice, Best Western, whatever. And now, now that I also have other opportunities to either get a subscription on TripAdvisor or become a loyal member to Expedia, how do you now differentiate loyalty? Like, what is the future of loyalty?
Well, I'll start, because the future for loyalty is obviously integrating our loyalty program with the Radisson program. So obviously after the acquisition in August, we're busy sort of making sure that we're looking at the best of what Radisson Rewards has, as well as the best of what Choice Privileges. We want to bring those together, so both customers are getting benefits and they actually see it as a win-win. So that's really the future for us, at least the integration. And then stepping back, and to your point, is what do Gen Zs, what do millennials want? What are the things we want to evolve the program into, so that it's not, hey, I've got to stay 10 times for the program to reward me. What are the things we can do along the way in terms of milestones? Going back to, how do you keep engagement with the guests throughout the year versus just on their stays?
And I would offer, I think loyalty is still the most important marketing asset. I mean, I know Marriott is the pace setter in loyalty, but the reality is, as we look at efficiencies in terms of customer acquisition, we understand data and offers and how we do closed user group marketing, that loyalty platform is really critical in terms of driving all of that. So I think everyone is going to continue to learn, relearn, and approach loyalty in terms of what they need to do. But I don't see it going away, because when I look in the development space, one of the key messages is that you choose one brand, and this is how much loyalty revenue contribution you can expect. And even though there's a cost of sale associated with a loyalty program to the hotelier, the bottom line is it's far cheaper than other customer acquisitions. We're
out of time, so you're going to get like 3 or 4, maybe 5 words, okay? In 5 words or less, how should hotels prepare for a possible downturn in 2023? Dorothy?
I am an optimist, and I think we're going to kill it in 23, so I'm not thinking about a downturn.
We thought this was going to be a bad year, and look what happened this year.
Look, I think the hotels know how to do this, right? They've gone through the pandemic. They've been able to adjust, so I think they're in a good position if it comes. I'm actually optimistic, as Dorothy is. We see our quarterly results have been really strong, and we see, we've actually eclipsed our 2019 revenue already.
Which is amazing.
So we think the future is
So we learned a lot,
strong.
Smarter.
Exactly.
And what would
Sorry.
I would say the same. Cautiously optimistic about the outlook, but we're going to use the muscles we developed over the past few years and react how we have to react.
So the best is yet to come.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Dorothy, Robert, Drew, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lorraine.
Thank you.
Online travel players spend more than $10 billion a year on advertising and servicing. Hard then to believe that less than 5% of consumer travel searches actually convert. But there is a kaleidoscope of new opportunities in online travel. Amadeus is innovating to help you transcend the old and bring on the new with solutions from search and automation to payment. Inspire and delight your customers with tailored offers, empowered by our technology and expertise. Transcend with Amadeus.